Welcome, my people, to another episode of the JR&Skipps podcast, the podcast between two friends where we touch on buzzing and trending topics from the entertainment scene, sports, and pop culture as a whole. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Link in the bio. Yo, Skips, what you saying?
Yeah, thanks, my G. Thanks for the nice intro. So today we're going to be covering the World Cup for 2026. It's hosted in Canada and United States. I think the first game is coming up on June the 11th. Something special about this World Cup, though, is kind of different from what everyone is used to in terms of we have, I think it's from Group A to, I think, L. So we're talking 48 teams in comparison to the standard 32 teams. This is kind of different, in my opinion, because it's going to be so many games compared to what we're used to with the previous setup. So I'm going to send it back to you, JR. Are you excited about this new 48 game setup compared to the 32 team setup?
One thing about me is I'm really not a fan of change or changing for the
Okay.
sake of changing, right? I mean, the previous 32 teams format was working in my opinion, and it gave us so many memorable moments. But still, I understand the need to be inclusive to other countries, right? And extend the World Cup to countries that would normally not qualify under the previous format. So maybe this is one of those situations where change might be, necessary. So let's see how it goes. But with regards to the matchups, I think that's what's going to happen, right? Some of the matches are going to be saturated, and we're going to get a lot of quote and unquote low level fixtures. But I think eventually it's going to bubble up into something that might be memorable because we might have some giant slaying and some real dark horses this time around. So yeah, I'm all up for it, I guess.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of excited about the new format because if you want to compare it to the Champions League format, when we got introduced to the new format, many people had opinions, many people thought this was not good. But honestly, we've gone 2 seasons now, and I think everyone is slowly getting used to it. So just
Fair enough.
maybe we all adapt to this new World Cup format. And I think you actually hit the nail on the head when you talked about the competition being quite saturated because of the number of teams. But just maybe it creates some element of fun due to having teams that you're not used to watching, and then you're seeing them probably taking down the big teams in terms of being a giant killer in the competition. So let's just go straight into it, though. Let's talk about our standout teams in terms of who we think is going to be the favorites. Personally, I think this competition is going to be headed by. I'm going to go for Spain, France, and Germany. So I think Spain is actually going to be the winner of the competition because they have superstars in terms of Lamine Yamal, which will be eyeing the Ballon d'Or for this year since he lost out narrowly to Ousmane Dembele in the previous year. And I think France is going to obviously worry as they always do, but
True.
maybe they're just going to end up being a close runner-up. But in terms of, I also see Germany having a lot to say in this competition. So I'm going to throw it back to you, JR. What teams do you think are going to be the favorites for the World Cup 2026?
I would say we would go with like the current Euros champions, which is Spain. I think Spain would be a team to look out for, but we can never, write off France. France, they're definitely going to be
True.
up there with the level of talented players they have. So I think I'm going to throw in Portugal in that mix as well. I think they have a great setup. It's there to be seen how they are going to, accommodate having a 41-year-old egomaniac, aka Ronaldo, as the focal point in the attack. But I think with his experience, I think he might be able to, blend his experience with the tenacity of the midfield and their talent level might shock some people in this tournament. Although I feel they are handicapped by all their coaches, which is Roberto Martinez. But yeah, we'll see. So for me, I would say Spain, France, Portugal for me. Standout
Okay, I
team.
think that's a bold shout in terms of Portugal because I still expect their game to be centered around Cristiano Ronaldo,
Fair
who,
enough.
if correct me if I'm wrong, is about 40 years old, but I guess he still has something to prove. He's never won the World Cup. His
Is
arch
a role,
rival,
of course.
yeah, his arch nemesis Messi won it the last time, so maybe you think this is his final last dance to lift the trophy.
You're talking
So,
about winning the World Cup. He has never even scored a knockout stage goal in the World Cup.
my days, man.
That's how bad it is. I'm
So
telling
that actually sucks for him. Okay, so good shout in terms of your standout teams and your favorites. Let's quickly switch into the talking about the group of death. Honestly, so I went through the groups, and as I said earlier, it's group A to L. We've never seen this before.
right?
And normally in the previous format, you're probably gonna have a scenario where top teams are grouped against each other. But
Right?
what I sort of found out in this new format is that basically I couldn't find a group of death, man. It just feels like all the top teams are definitely gonna get out of their groups because
right?
there's so many substandard teams that they wouldn't normally be playing against. So what do you think about the group of death? Did you spot any group that caught your eye, or do you feel the same way?
I think I share your sentiments with the fact that there's probably not a group of dates in the sense that it's spread out amongst the 12 groups, right?
Yeah,
Ideally, to your point, you probably have seen a group where three, four of the hopeful like contenders that people expect to win the World Cup will probably have like three or four of them in a group, and traditionally we get the group of dates. But this time around, I think it's spread out, and maybe we will not see those big matchups until we get into like the knockout stages, which I think maybe is the real reason for the new format to save the big games for the later stages. But yeah, I don't think there's a group of death this time around. I think it's flat, to be fair, my G.
yeah, but I guess that will make sure that the hype increases as the competition goes on because
Fair enough.
if we're saving the best games for last, then it just gets hot and spicy the more you go into the tournament.
Fair enough.
So quickly though, let's touch on our dark horse. Considering there's no group of death, it sort of means it's even hard to even pick a dark horse. But
Mhm.
considering when I talked about my favorites, I mentioned Spain, France, and Germany. So, Germany is going to be my dark horse. What about you, JR?
Um, I know it seems like they are the traditional dark horses for every World Cup tournament, so, but I'm just gonna go for them again. To me, it's probably gonna be Belgium. I know their golden generation is probably eased out with the Courtois, KDB, Hazards, and Lukaku's. And
Lukaku.
they are probably eased off, but I think they still have some. They have the Saint Lamens, they have the Dokus. So I think they'll probably shock a few teams and do it, and get a few scalpels in this tournament as well. So I'm tipping them to be my dark horses for this tournament. Belgium.
Okay, man's really said lamens though, but I guess it is what it is. Okay, so let's quickly go into some
Really?
nice let's go into some nice matchups though. So looking at the group stage, it feels like it's gonna be an easy group for Brazil because honestly, I could only see Morocco being a worthy competition. But I expect Brazil to finish first, and just maybe Morocco give them a game. And in terms of Morocco, we're talking about Ashraf Hakimi, Ayub Boadi, who left France for Morocco. So just maybe that's going to be the game to watch out in the group stage. Any
True.
other group game you have in mind that you think we could find some excitement in?
I have my eye on the Brazil Morocco game too, like you said, but I think
Okay.
maybe England or Ghana might be one to look out
Yeah.
for.
England Ghana might be fun.
Yeah, it might be fun as well. I mean, when the competition starts, we'll probably see teams, that we are probably writing off right now, put up a decent fight. So no disrespect to the teams by saying we don't expect them to be any interesting games, but we're just speaking from a traditional point of view. I don't see any big lineups right now that are exciting in the group stages.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just gonna mention a couple, maybe some honorable mentions. I think the Canada Switzerland game might be one to watch out for. I think Germany Ivory Coast might also be nice, and maybe
Oh,
Ecuador might be a dark horse in that group. I
nice.
also think Spain Uruguay might be a
Ooh.
sweet game. So
Ooh.
let maybe we just have some excitement more than we think. Maybe because of the new format, we're all like the beginning is gonna be dry, but
True,
I guess
true,
the group
true.
stage might just have something for us. And before I wrap up on the group stage, we're also going to have France versus Senegal. So we're talking about the proposed
Francophone
CAF
derby.
champions uh, versus the big boys in France. So let's see how that game goes. I think that's going to be exciting. I'm still
Hmm.
going to tip France to lead the group, but I expect Senegal to make it out of that group in second place.
Okay.
So let's quickly switch into our top performers. I think we kind of touched up on it earlier when we talked about our top teams to perform, but now let's go straight to the players. I think this is going to be a big competition for Lamine Yamal. As I said earlier, he has his eye on the Ballon d'Or, and you win the World Cup, you're nail on to win the Ballon d'Or for the year. Any top performance you have in mind?
I would say Kylian Mbappe,
Yeah.
Dembele, Bruno Fernandes. Don't sleep on him. I think he's probably going to have one or two decent performances. I think the team is playing for. There's a lot of engine in the midfield, which will give him the ability to just focus on being creative, and I think that's where he thrives the most. So I think Bruno might be one to watch out for. Um, Dembele I already mentioned. So I think on the African scene, I don't see any body right now that I think might put up a decent performance. I may be wrong, but yeah, I think right now it's Yamal, like you mentioned. Hopefully the stage is not too bright for him, and he comes through.
Yeah.
Yamal, Dembele, Mbappe, and Bruno for me. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the stage being too bright, I think based on how he performed in the Euros at just 16 years old, that kind of tells us he's ready for the big stage and he's won like two La Liga titles back to back. So I
Right.
think Yamal will have a big shout. And in terms of the Africans that maybe we think might light up the World Cup, I'm going to give a bold shout to Antoine Semenyo, England, Ghana. Just maybe he turns up in that game and make sure that the world knows that, I'm here in the big stage. I play for a big football club and also take Ghana to the maybe quarters, round of 16. You never know. So shout out to Antoine Semenyo. And in terms of my other performers, I think they're going to have something to say. I think Vinicius is going to want to show that he's the main man for Brazil, considering they still called up Neymar.
Yeah, speaking of it, I want to add Cunha to my stars to watch out as
Oh
well.
my God, Massive
Martinez,
Cunha.
Cunha, yep.
Okay. Okay, so JR says Cunha. I'm just gonna tip in Bukayo Saka there, as an Arsenal boy. I expect Saka to have something to say for England as well as Harry Kane.
Team
So,
Spurs.
yeah, let's see how the competition goes. But I think it's fair to say most of these players that we're mentioning would definitely be the ones to light up the World Cup in 2026 in US and Canada. Okay, so we've been talking about the top performers. How about we actually touch on the underdogs? What players do you think, there's no hype around them, but just maybe they turn up properly in the World Cup? My number one shout out is gonna be Mikel Merino. I know most people might be like, yeah, Arsenal again. But really, man, Merino has a knack for turning up with the goals when he plays for his national team. And we could also see how he played in terms of scoring goals for Arsenal when playing up front. So I think Mikel Merino is going to have a good World Cup this year. I also think Kai Havertz will actually be an underdog. Many people look at Havertz, they don't like how he plays, but at the end of the day, he gets to score the goals. Any players you think is going to be an underdog in this tournament?
I would say bold shout out Kobe Mainu. I think he's gonna have a breakout World Cup campaign. He might not light up the
Okay.
stage, but I think he's probably gonna have some imposing performances in the midfield. So I think that's one to look out for Kobe Mainu. I would say uh
What do you think about Igor Thiago?
Igor Thiago, I mean, he gets in the right positions, but he has a knack for being wasteful. So I don't really know if he's probably gonna have his firing boots on in this World Cup. But that's left to be seen, right? I think yeah, definitely if he has his shooting boots on, I think he's probably gonna bang in a couple of goals. But I don't. Yeah, I think we could. He has a legit shout to be one of the underdogs to look out, right? I think look out for rather. So I think Igor Thiago and for me Kobe Mainu.
Okay. All right. Nice shout on Kobe Mainoo. Just as you said, this might just be a breakout World Cup for him, and that would basically propel him to the world stage. So let's see how that goes for. Let's quickly touch on who do we expect to be the top scorer for the World Cup. I'm really excited to see Erling Haaland finally partaking in a World Cup tournament. I thought
Right.
he was never gonna get the
Happen.
chance to play. But my boy Odegaard, gave him a lot of assists and propelled the Norway team to the World Cup. So I think Erling Haaland is probably going to score a lot of goals in this competition. And also, I think Mbappe is also going to score a lot of goals. If you want to reference his performance in the last World Cup. And any other player you think would be, putting in the ball in the back of the net in this competition?
I would say Igor Thiago. I think
Okay.
the Brazilian team will probably create a couple of chances for him. I would say Harry Kane. So if I'm
Yeah.
saying, I would say Harry Kane is my first to be the highest goal scorer,
Yeah.
and followed by Dembele. Then random shout out to Igor Thiago. So I think those three. Right.
Okay. I'm just gonna name two more players. I think Yamal might. I think he's gonna score some goals. Maybe not top scorer worthy, but
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
he's gonna have some goals in this competition.
Yeah, I
And
don't
in
think.
terms of underdog top goal scorer, I'm just gonna hype my guy Victor Gyökeres. Yes, I've had a lot to say in terms of throwing shots at my number one striker, but still, when he plays for Sweden, he propelled them to the World Cup with the two goals he scored in the qualifier. So just maybe he continues his run of form and scores a couple goals and maybe 2-3 in the World Cup. But props to Victor Gyökeres, man. Do this stuff for me. Okay, so to wrap up our World Cup edition though, so I think the first World Cup I actually watched was France '98. I'm just gonna throw it back to you then. How many World Cups have you watched so far?
Hmm. I think my first fully formed experience of watching the World Cup is France '98, but I have memories of the USA '94, right? I think I
Okay.
remember Roberto Baggio skying his penalty in the penalty shootout in Italy versus Brazil, where Brazil went on to win the game. I was a little kid, but I could remember a lot of hocus and noise making around then. So I
Yeah.
would say if we're saying the first one I actually remember is probably going to be France '98. Yeah, so
Yeah.
same for
Yeah, I
me.
remember Henry in that France '98. Like that
Yep.
was tough for me.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess that's like 8 World Cups for me and probably 10. Man, you're an OG, my guy.
Bro, you need
So
to
that,
go on. Like, I need to get you in the nursing home. Like,
bruh.
what are you doing,
Okay,
fam?
so we're gonna throw it up to you guys, the viewers. How many World Cups have you watched so far? You can drop it in the comments in the chat. Let's just see. Do we have more OGs in the chat? Do we have the youngies in the chat? So drop it in the message and let's know how many World Cups you've watched so far.
And also, what's your most memorable moments from whatever World Cup you've watched, right? I think mine has to be the Zidane sending off in World Cup 2006.
Everyone
Right?
remembers that.
Exactly. Like, I also remember the heartbreak we felt, when Spain scored the goal in the South Africa hosted World Cup in 2010. After
True.
all the missed chances by Netherlands, everybody really
I
wanted to.
remember what's his name? Samuel Gyan getting sent off.
Right, exactly. Suarez crying like a kid
Suarez
after the red
handball.
card, then jubilating when he misses the penalty. Like, yes, there's so many memories from World Cups, right? So share your memorable moments from World Cups that you've seen with us in the comments, and let us know how old you are. If you're an OG before IG, or if you're a youngin, tap in and let us know.
Yeah, and I guess whoever comes up and says his most memorable moment was Messi lifting the World Cup. We know you're a youngin, but
Yeah.
just still put
Get
it
them
in the
the fuck
chat, man.
out of here, bruh.
Okay. So let's call it a wrap. Once again, thanks for joining us on the JR&Skipps podcast. It's JR_Skipps at Twitter and on Instagram. It's JR_Skipps_podcast. Tap in.